I remember back in the day with your YouTube videos, because I know Gunfighters Inc. I know Adam over there and work with him.
Man.
I know you guys.
Shout out to Adam at Gunfighters Inc.
He's awesome. But you guys used to go back and forth kind of with ideas and somewhat challenging each other, if I remember correctly, right?
A little bit, and I kind of do that with Rob at Off the Grid Concepts too. Like I'll occasionally, we started. I saw Rob did that Boba Fett holster, which I was like, oh, that's awesome, but I cannot let this stand. This cannot stand. So I took an afternoon. I think it was I was like, no, I got obsessed, and I made the Yoda holster, and that kind of like sparked the whole other little things. And so it's. I think the competition now is like more in like the craftsmanship and like the throwdown of the craftsmanship to a certain degree. Like, wow, look at that. Yeah. I just made that, you know? And, you know, whether or not it like goes into production, like I'm not going to sit down and make Yoda holsters all day. I'll go, you know, it'll take me like a whole day to make it 1.5 of them,
right.
You know? And then nobody's going to buy them because I'll have to charge like $300 for each one. It'll be like, I'll be insane to do that. Yeah. But it's kind of like that like little competitiveness breeds like advancement overall, because it'll like keep releasing like interesting like, you know, little tips, tricks, and like techniques of doing things. Like that Han Solo blaster, 90% of those shapes are just empty space.
Right.
You know, but that could lead somebody to do something, you know, something really interesting that I would never get into production of.
Right.
You know, maybe somebody somewhere looks at that and says, oh, I'm going to use this to generate a practical solution, and then a whole new product is born.
Yeah, Halloween.
What?
Halloween. I bet a lot of people would buy that for Halloween for their costumes.
Oh, yeah, that'd be pretty cool. It makes me want to like do more like costume-y movie stuff, which I think would be awesome.
Yeah. So, how many people are actually working at PHLster?
Well, I have one full-time guy, Mikey, who's been with me back since we were working out of the house. And Mikey is the most phenomenal dude I know. His work ethic is like crazier and better than mine to a certain degree. Like we'll sit down, we'll like talk about ideas for improving things. I'll come back in on Monday and he'll say, yeah, so I downloaded CAD and like designed all these things over the weekend. Or he's like, yeah, I saw that we were doing this sort of thing, so I like got all the data off of PayPal and I turned it into this like insane Excel spreadsheet that like predicts our workflow. And I'm like, that's phenomenal. So Mikey's like my manager. He's the man, and we fluctuate between having 2 to 3 part-time workers. One of them, unfortunately, who was doing a great job, has to go back to school. So I'm going to hire somebody full-time to do some of the more basic molding and production stuff. And to be perfectly honest, I might rub a couple feathers the wrong way. I found that folks who, you know, this might be, you know, some sort of personal bias, but I find that folks who have like craft backgrounds tend to do better than folks who have gun backgrounds, because your knowledge of guns isn't entirely relevant in terms of your ability to perform this process.
Right.
You know, your attention to detail, your craftsmanship, your personal high standards for getting these things right, and your material sensitivity and your artistic eye are what's the most important. So I'll hire somebody who's been making, you know, jewelry or doing woodworking for a couple of years before I hire somebody who's shot every machine gun in the world, because they know about machine guns. Do they know about like crafting things? And that's what's important.
Yeah,
and that's what the customer pays for. The customer pays for something that's well crafted and well made.
Right.
They don't pay you for what you know about things that don't have to do with that holster.
Yeah, once you get the actual design down and what you're going to do, at that point it's just replicating it the best you can.
Yeah, and you know, consistency is a really big marker of quality. You know, if you go to a restaurant and one day it's really good and one day it's okay, is that a good restaurant? Based on that really good, no, it's going to average out. So if you make, you know, batches of holsters and some of them are really good, but you get a couple duds in there, then you're only as good as that average. Or, you know, it's like the, you know, weakest link in the chain kind of thing.
Right.
So if you want to be good, you have to be good across the board all the time.
Right.
And I'll take that over anything.
Right. So
people have kind of asked, like, oh, are you going to support this model of gun or that model of gun? And my frank answer has been that if I only made one model of holster for one gun in the world and it was utterly perfect, I would do that, rather than try to make something for everybody and see like any kind of suffering quality whatsoever. That's unacceptable. But if I make the best XYZ holster for this ever, I'm much happier if I'm in that position. If it's, if I only ever made the best Glock holster in the world, then I'd be happier than if I made, something for everybody and kept everybody kind of, oh, that was cool. I got a decent holster from this guy. I want somebody to say, yes, this is totally perfect.
Yeah, like
even if that comes at the expense of, reaching as many people as I would have normally reached.
Right, and I mean that might be something future, the future of Philster that you could do, once you actually, go a little bit further down the road of the company,
right.
but currently, that's a smart business decision, I think.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, 90% of what we make is for Glocks, and that's most of our backlog. So we're gonna focus on making those holsters better and faster, or faster without reducing quality.
Right.
But I think in order to make them faster, we're going to have to invest in components and processes that will improve the quality, rather than say, oh yeah, well, so and so just came out with this new gun that's kind of a fad for now, and that they might change next year.
Right.
Well, what if I just made a holster that fit every Glock that's been made in the past 25 years, and if you told me that Glock was going to change a single thing about their design in the next 25 years, I would laugh.
Nah.
It's going to be a brick for the next 20. Let's face it. So, if I'd be happy. I'd be much happier to make, a holster that's going to fit every past Glock and potentially every future Glock, rather than sort of
like
to a
making
degree,
like a shield.
If a new gun comes out and you're making holsters for it, you're going to be on the top feed of everybody's YouTube because, you're going to be in a lot of searches because everybody's going, oh, there's some new duper out there that it's like the got-to-have thing. And so people are going to be researching it and buying it, and then in a year, they're going to trade it in on whatever the next duper is.
Yeah.
So, you can chase the fads and, I'm not going to lie, we took advantage of that when the Shield came out. But the sustaining popularity of that, especially in terms of our sales and its sales, I think was probably a good choice.
Right.
But everybody's coming out with new cool stuff. I mean, remember when the FN57 came out? Mm-hmm. Everybody had to have one, and now they're not making it anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was in when did it come out? Not that long ago.
Was that 2 years ago?
Not that long in terms of Gunland.
Yeah.
Even if it came out 9 or 10 years ago, that's still a relatively short time span in terms of, if you want to look at things on the 1911 calendar.
Yeah, exactly. So, I see, videos with Arm Dynamics with Jeff over there. What's your relationship with Jeff? Is he involved in any of the? I'm sure he's involved in making stuff, especially the knife, holster.
Oh yeah. I remember Jeff and I used to go we still do go to the same range, but this was a different range. I would see him at the range. I'm like, oh, I think I know that guy, and I'd try and make friends with him, and he was always busy with a client or what have you. And one day I'm in there, I'm just shooting by myself, and I come off the range. He's like, hey, so who have you trained with? And I'm like, nobody. And so we got to talking a little bit, and I noticed that he had these sort of disintegrating older leather holsters, and I'm like, why are you running it like a NRA white mustache certified fishing vest rate leather holster in the day and age where everybody's using Kydex. He's like, well, we got away from Kydex, we were breaking them, there were things that we didn't like about them, look, let me change your mind, come to our shop. And it all started from there. I made him something that he liked and couldn't break. So he's we've been really good buddies ever since then. To the point where it's not just hi Jeff, let's talk business. We'll hang out together. He lives in relatively close proximity to me. So it's at the point where if I have to go do something, I'll he'll watch my dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you guys also collaborated on that the K-bar, right?
Yeah, the K-bar sheath. He's a big fan of the TDI, and as many people were, he was not only dissatisfied with the factory sheath, but there were a lot of attempts to improve on the factory sheath that folks were doing. They'd make something with a tech lock or what have you. But after a lot of combatives evolutions in terms of ECQC and other kind of hands-on stuff, what we needed to do was develop a sheath that wouldn't ditch the knife when you're in a closely entangled fight. We need the sheath cannot ever ditch this knife and stitch you up. When you don't want to have to find that it's become dislodged and you've rolled over onto it.
Right.
Pardon me. And it also needs to have unimpeded access in terms of getting a full grip. I wouldn't make a holster that covered any part of the grip of the gun.
Right.
On the front or the back. And so I don't think a knife sheath should do that either. You should be able to get the 100% panicked, full fighting for your life grip that you need on this thing in any position. And it also has to be concealable because the knife is really, really slim and really flat. And I don't even think that factory sheath is concealable in terms of the variety of concealment scenarios they envision. In terms of either concealing it behind your duty equipment. And if I was, I wouldn't be confident in its retention.
Right.
For one. And it's as big as a pager, almost. So, it needed to be slim, so we went through a couple evolutions and trials of it, and we developed that sheath, which I think, I really don't like to toot my own horn. But I think it's the sheath to copy. I think I've seen a lot of these sheaths, and I've seen people demonstrate them. None of them have the same positive retention that ours does. None of them have the slim design, and I don't think any of them are quite as versatile. I'm really proud of that sheath, and every time I look at one before we package it up, it really makes me happy. They are the sort of thing they're the thing. They're the thing that is we make one knife sheath, for one knife in production, and that's it. And each one gets the level of attention that we want to give them, and they come out I'm just partially because Mikey makes so many of them, I can speak highly of them without feeling too bad about myself. But I'm really proud of those. I'm really pleased with them, and they're everything that I want to focus on in terms of simplicity and quality and consistency.
Yeah. So we've talked about a lot of different things. You got the skeleton, the access. We have the knife sheath there for the K-bar. Where we'll end on this question here. Where do you see PHLster going in the next 5 years? What's on the horizon?
Well, there are a couple products that we make that I think could be significantly improved through a certain amount of mass production. Making the kind of equipment that we make, honestly, pushes the limits of what Kydex LLC thinks is technically possible for this material. Most, Kydex, those of us who are making this kind of gear constitute a very narrow portion of Kydex's overall sales. And most of what Kydex goes to are essentially static fixtures, things that don't require any kind of flexing or remotely the kind of abuse of this sort of thing. Yeah. It'll be the back shell of a tray table or an electronics enclosure.
Right.
So what we do with Kydex pushes the limits of Kydex in terms of what they think is possible with it, which is a really cool place to be. Additionally, if you want to get involved in a lot of serious mass production, and I know that some larger companies run into this problem, is that the QC specs for the Kydex vary pretty widely. So anybody can do this. You can get a sheet of Kydex. You go order 5 sheets of Kydex from Kydex LLC over a period of months, And if you mic them out, what you'll find is that something that you've ordered to be 80,000 specs might be 88,000s or 76,000s.
Oh wow!
So it's a pretty wide range of specifications, which is no problem when you're hand forming it, especially using a foam press. That specification does not come into play. Mm-hmm. However, if you start investing in machinery that's going to do this for you, that specification and that variation comes into play significantly. So in terms of some of the products that we think should be, there's stuff that we make which I think should be less expensive and more readily available. Specifically stuff like our mag carriers and the skeletons. Like, I'd like those all to be, $5 less and made out of a vastly more durable material than Kydex is. So I think that over a longer period of time, I'd like to see those injection molded. And doing that, I don't think is necessarily a reduction in quality. If I'm making a product that is stronger, more available, and more consistent, and less expensive, how have I gone astray? I mean, to a degree, it's like, oh, you're not staying true to the hand form, Kydex, whatever that's about. But
well, they should ask themselves that question when they actually have to grab for another magazine.
Right, exactly. Now, that's not saying that we've had any significant failures in our magazine carriers. Those OWV mag carriers have been absolutely bomb-proof so far. I think we've had 0 returns on those, which is amazing. I'm astonished myself, but I think I'd like to see them a little bit better in certain ways that can only be achieved through a certain level of mass production.
Right.
And if that means that more people have a higher quality piece of gear and they've increased their capabilities for less money, then that's a win for everybody. No, John, did not sit down and make it by hand and polish every little edge. But the only reason we put so much care into them is because we want them to be as good as something that came out of a machine.
Right.
We want them to have machine levels of consistency, machine levels of strength, but we're stuck with a budget that allows us to hand form them.
Right.
Which is why they come out the way they come out.
Right.
And there are certain capabilities that I'd like them to have that require mass-produced components or an entirely mass-produced product. So what I'd really like over the next year or two is develop solutions for allowing that to happen. And like I said, we're not going to go to some big bank and get a loan, because that's slavery, period. And I refuse to do it. And so I actually, might float this idea out there right now. I've been thinking, injection molding is a big investment. Actually, a company around the corner from us on Roosevelt Boulevard here in Philadelphia makes a lot of componentry for the U.S. Postal Service and for Streamlight flashlights. And I've, visited their facility a while back, and I talked to them. What I'd really like to do is involve the community in our effort to get things injection molded. So, I'm thinking about doing something like a Kickstarter project, honestly, where if somebody, kicks in $30, they'll get $50 retail value worth of gear at the end of it once the process is over.
Right.
And, and then all we would need is 1,000 people to kick in $30, and we have enough money to invest in the injection molding.
Right.
Knowing that it will sell. And we're not in a situation where we go, all right, we've spent $20,000 on injection molding. Does PHLster Holsters have the voice and the position in the industry to move enough product to make this viable?
Right.
Or are we going to just sort of take the next 5 years to recoup the $20,000 that we put out for this? So that's kind of where I'm thinking about this, and I think there are enough people out there who want to see where this goes that they might be interested in helping out with that, and that would be awesome. And that's kind of how we do things. We always try to involve the community, and I think if people wanted to do that, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I've seen that Kickstarter used with a lot of different things, and
Kickstarter might not be so keen on guns. I don't know. I haven't checked. Maybe there's some sort of some sort of alternative thing. I'm
it.
sure folks will tell us all about that in the comments. They will either say, "Oh, forget Kickstarter. They hate the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
You should go with 2A projects." I'm sure somebody will have the solution for that. And please tell us about it in the comments, because that'd be awesome, and maybe we'll get this ball rolling.
Yeah, I've seen someone, the one gentleman from Top Shot. He had a cleaning kit that was formed like a AR-15 magazine, like a GI mag. So I know he did his on Kickstarter. So maybe they are decent.
Really?
Yeah.
If they do a gun cleaning kit, they'll definitely go for holsters.
Yeah. Maybe not guns, but holsters.
Right. Dear Kickstarter, help us buy a 3D printer so we can make liberators all day.
Yeah. Well, thanks for taking the time out for coming on here and doing an interview. I'm probably gonna break it up into 2 parts.
All right, cool.
So we're about an hour, so we'll do about 2 half-hour segments, and
Awesome.
we'll get them out, and we'll definitely get back together a couple months here down the road and see where you're at.
Well, you're in Pennsylvania, man. We should go shooting. I keep meaning to. Hey, actually.
Well, Jeff and you and I were supposed to go shooting.
Out on me and Jeff, man.
Yeah. Jeff and you and I were supposed to go
And you were like, "Oh no, man, it's Sunday. I don't know."
Yeah. Well, I do live in a cornfield, so it's a little different on Sundays here. But yeah, we'll get together and we'll see where you guys are at, and we'll talk. So thanks for taking the time, and we'll get these up.
Thank you. Take it easy.